I really like this. We all have a better guide in ourselves if we would attend to it than any other person can be. So this really talks about, I think, the natural wisdom, the natural intelligence, the natural instinct that we all have. And often what happens, especially at work, is we can get burdened by doubt, by maybe aggression from areas of our workplace. We can start to feel less than ourselves because there are pressures within the workplace. Maybe there's a lot of change going on. Perhaps there's a lot of uncertainty. When you have that in any organization, what comes up is everyone's fear. And it's like the fear comes up in people individually and it connects collectively, and suddenly we have a lot of things going on that are based on fear. And when you have that, you really don't get the best outcome. You don't get the best outcome personally, and you don't get the best outcome for the organization. And this is like a big deal, because I think it happens in teams, it happens in organizations, large and small, and we can do something about that. You can do something about that. You can stay grounded in you, so that as all this is connecting in your organization or in your team, you don't get attached. You're not in the web. So you've broken it for the people around you. There's the great quote by Gandhi that you can be the change in the world. And I really think that you can be the change in your workplace. If you really want a healthy, harmonious workplace, it starts with you. That's the only thing you have control over. You don't have control over where the budget dollars are going. You don't have control over who's merging and acquiring who. You don't have control over what decisions are going to be made above you. But you absolutely have control of your reactions to situation, of your words. These are all things that you can control. And you can choose to be a really positive contributor to your work environment. It's a choice. And I urge all of you to take that on, because it helps. It helps your workplace. It'll help you, it'll help your teammates, it'll help your team, it'll help your company. So I want to talk a little bit more about some aspects of this, some aspects of staying grounded in who you are and how you can actually develop that. Yes?
I don't know if this is the right time or any time's the right time. A couple of things that you said in this last account and what Jen said over earlier on in terms of networking. And I agree with you that people have asked you to forget and all this. But a lot of these networking events can be very exhausting because people, they become very transactional. And very kind of, you know, if I don't get anything out of you, I'm not interested. And it reminds me in a different life when I was advised about networking, and it's not a profession that you usually associate with networking. One of the advice in our faculty that we're given is don't expect anything. Just maintain a relationship and just have the relationship and don't make it transactional. And I thought that was always very welcome, and I think it's maybe along the lines that we're trying to, this second thought, except that you can't maintain all the relationships all the time with everybody, you know, in a nice kind of way. So I have a problem reconciling those two approaches. On the one hand, the judge is right. If somebody came up to me like that and they would, you know, I just met you and within 30 seconds you told me this is what you want from me, and I said, okay, yeah, okay, if I can help you, fine. And then the next 30 people will tell me something else. By the end of the evening, I just want to get out of there. Or by the third person, I want to get out of there. So, so how do you reconcile these two things? And I think a lot of people have problems with that. So either you don't go, or you don't actually network properly, or you rely on your family. So, you know, maybe this is more than you can deliver in this situation, but
I'll just give you a couple of thoughts on what you're saying. I mean, I think that you need to be clear why you're there. If you don't like those kinds of networking events, personally, I'd stop going. Really. There's lots of other ways to network. that might lend themselves more to your style. So honestly, I would assess your own situation and say, am I comfortable doing this or not? And if you're not, don't go. You know, if it makes you feel bad, it's not worth going. I think if you decide that it is something worthwhile, then you want to make it the best for you, and you want to do your best with the people that you are. So usually, you go to something like that, you're at a table, you're meeting people, yes, you're right, there's a bit of artificiality to it, because everybody knows that they're going to exchange business cards, and everybody knows that they're going to, you know, tell each other what they do, and that kind of thing, but big deal. Really, at the end of the night, you have a handful of business cards, and maybe something happens with those, and maybe it doesn't. If you have no expectation of something happening or getting something, that's great. Because then if something does happen and you click with someone, that's just a bonus for you. So I think partly you have to check in with your own resistance. You have to check in with like what's happening as you walk through the door. Right? Yeah. So, okay. So knowing yourself, hot buttons, passions, your stress points. A really good way to do this is to take a moment to reflect when there's been a situation that is highly emotionally charged. Anything that has a high emotional charge factor is a really good opportunity to look at what is really going on in that situation, right? So if you have some, so it could be a conflict, it could be whatever it is that sparks a lot of stuff in you, you could ask yourself why it's happening. I think this is later down, but I'm going to talk about it now. Toyota has a process called the 5 whys. Does everyone know all the stuff about Toyota and all the process improvement? So one aspect of the 5 whys that they implement is that, let's say something happens down on the shop floor. So they go down to the shop floor, and you're there, and I say to you, why did this happen? And you might have an explanation, and it might be, well, because the part came 2 seconds later than it was supposed to, or whatever. That's the first answer to why. But then we have to go back and we have to find out, well, why did it come 2 seconds later than it was supposed to? So I might ask someone else, well, why did that happen? Oh, well, that's because we got our shipment late, and so we had to, you know, load it late or whatever. And then you keep going, and soon, eventually, you figure out what really happened, right? What is at the root of the cause of the thing that's over here? You can use the 5 whys in your life. Because usually, if you have a situation that is highly emotionally charged, there is something that is way down underneath there that won't be answered by the first why. So when something happens, whether it's at work, this could be, you could use this on a personal level as well, absolutely. You could say, why did this happen? Why am I so angry? It's a really good question. Why am I so angry about this? And you will come probably with an answer. Because Susie pissed me off, and she shouldn't have done whatever she did. That's probably, maybe, going to be your first answer. So that's okay. That was the first answer we got to our first why. And then we're going to ask, well, why? What exactly, why did Susie piss us off? You know, why did she make us so angry? And we could go down a little bit deeper and see, well, she said this, she said X, Y, Z. She made this statement to me. Oh, okay, so that's what we're mad at. We're mad at a statement she made. Well, why? Why? What words were in that statement that made us so upset? And go back down, and eventually, we get down to something that's probably deeper and more accurate as to why you had such an emotional reaction or charge. And I encourage you to spend time thinking about this, because you will learn more about yourself. And learning more about yourself is really, really important. It's a very, very valuable lesson.